Hi. Uh, I'm mostly happy with Master Duel, aside from like the obvious gems slowing down and all that. A few of the things that I really hate is when you like go from the main menu to like the deck. I'm not sure if this is for everyone, but for me it takes like a few seconds before you can click into a different one.
Yeah, I've noticed that. There's like a slight delay that it like has to load first.
Yeah, I don't think like a game like Master Duel should have a delay like that.
So at least the main problems you have are interface related rather than any sort of major gameplay stuff, I hope, right?
Yeah. Like,
Okay.
yeah, that's everything.
See you later.
Bye.
This is like a real thing, chat. Like you don't actually notice it until you like focus on it, right? So click here. Alright, so the little loading here, right? So it's connecting, it's loading. Yep, this is natural, right? So you first open the game, you load up. Alright, and I go to Duel. I go Duel. Nah, I don't want to go Duel. I want to go back to the main menu. See? There's like this tiny, just 1 second extra bit of loading when you go back to the main menu. Go into my deck. Go back. I can't click solo mode. It has to load again. I can explain it. Whoa. Go on then. Explain.
Yeah. So what's essentially happening at that point is when you load into like your UI prompts, the way they have it programmed is that it has to make database calls to find out the information that you have made like on the server. So it's like, okay, so like what are the notifications he hasn't read? What are the any quests that he's completed? What is like, does he have anything in the solo mode? And then it loads in all that data at that point. And for some reason, I don't know why they're doing it dynamically, so that like when you hop out of the UI, that's essentially like they're streaming it. It's really weird, and that takes a lot longer on a Switch as well.
So can you say that apart again, but easier?
Okay, so like when you're at the title sequence, right? There's like a ton of information that like Master Duel wants to like give you, right? And it's like there's notifications, achievements, your solo mode completion rate, your what's the where you get the little pot of greed jar thing.
The Duel Pass?
Yeah, the Duel Pass, like all that information. For some reason, it's being like loaded in dynamically every time.
Okay, why do you? What does dynamically mean here in this computer software context?
That for some reason it assumes that like when you go into the deck mode and then you come back out, it assumes that there's something there that could have updated the database. So It goes back to the server, looks again to see like, okay, let me get all this information back, and then let me like load it into the UI to like update.
Basically, every time I go into one of the menus and then you just immediately come out, it just has to refresh every piece of information.
Yes, because it assumes that there could have been some sort of change, which I don't know. Like they probably could have programmed that better to not have to make that, because there's obviously certain places like in that one that you just showed, right? Like nothing's going to change from you going into the Duel menu back out, but for some reason the game's just hard programmed to like, oh, do a refresh to show everything again.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Everything's like streamed in that game, so like even like you'll notice it on Switch too, where like if you go into a deck editor and you have to like you want to go build a deck, you have to wait for it to go to the server and then like load up the entire card database, and it takes it like a good 30-40 seconds before you can actually like interact with that seed.
Imagine you're in a shop and after every step you take, the shop assistant comes over and says, "Can I help you, sir?"
Yes.
That's awful. Why can't they just change that?
Yeah, no, and then the problem is at this point, because that's netcode based, that's probably going to be that's probably embedded into the core of their system. So like there's no way that
it's just never changing because it's part of just the fundamental fucking
built. Yeah, how they decided to build within this game.
Great.
Like if they were to reconfigure that, it would probably take a lot of work, and it'd probably take so much work and time and engineers that at that point it's probably not even worth it. Netcode is the worst.
Okay, well, that's annoying. Anyway, you are probably had something to talk about that wasn't related to code, so go ahead.
Oh, Well, actually, it's kind of funny because I think I have like a very different take when it comes to like Master Duel. Well, I wouldn't say it's like a different take. I just have a more like I work as like a game programmer, so I have like a lot more insight. I feel into like how everything's working and how Konami's managing everything. And it's kind of funny because I think yesterday it was like a lot of like doomsday videos talking about like, oh, Master Duels, it's over, it's being ruined. It's gonna die. It was like a lot of doomsday posts, but like a lot of like what's happening now just kind of makes sense from like a game development perspective, with like essentially how they're operating and like what they're doing and like how everything's currently working. So in a sense right now, I don't know if you noticed that one like Twitter post where they're showing the like the current like, trend of Yu-Gi-Oh and how it's like surpassed MTG Arena or like MTG. Yeah, and essentially I think right now what their goal is like we want to make that number go even higher. And so the thing that's gonna like make that number go even higher right now, I think, is a successful mobile release. And so I'm pretty sure they're like focusing full force on mobile development to get that out into like NA and other locations to get that like fully functional. It's kind of sad to say because like Konami for sure has like metrics on like player activity and player like who's playing the game, where everyone's at. And like when you see the bar go from like where it was at to like where it's at now, I think it's like 1 in 3 games about now is probably going to be like against someone that's actually like been playing the TCG. And then like 2/3 right now of like the audience is like either A, getting back into it, or B, they're really new. And so like the whole goal is like, I think at this point they kind of know that like the existing player base right now is like, no matter what we do, they're probably going to stick around because they're like ingrained in Yu-Gi-Oh, and so now we got to focus on like, well, how do we keep retention for these new players that are like coming in? And it's kind of weird to say, but like having the less content right now is like the best because it gives newer players or returning players more time to like adapt and get accommodated with like the systems that they're working in now, and then adding that stuff in later once because like no matter what, like fall off is going to happen at some point, but like if you can get that number to go like super high in the very beginning, it's going to affect the fallout numbers. I think right now it's like their main focus is like, okay, well, like how do we get that number to be really high? And then from that point on, like that's at the point where you're going to probably start seeing more implementation to like retain players, right? Which is like the updated ladder fixes, updated like more content essentially for people to consume.
I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but you're the game dev guy, so I assume you probably know what you're talking about in terms of release cycles and stuff. So, and
this is all assumption. Like I know the one thing too, because so like this whole thing with like a shadow drop. This is actually something that like we tried to do with Mass Effect when we were trying to release this, the remastered edition.
Did you make Mass Effect?
Well, I didn't make Mass Effect. I worked on the remaster, the legendary edition, and at that time we were like we wanted to shadow drop it. We wanted to, because what a shadow drop does, the existing community, it's just a surprise amount of hype. Like it's like one of those things where it's like everyone at that point is like freaking out about the launch of the game, and then that in itself generates so much hype that it sends you off, right? And it does so without like a plan or anything of that sort. But in our case, it kind of got ruined because the game got leaked and everyone started speculating that the game was being made, and so like we kind of had to shift gears into like, okay, well, like the hype's gonna die down now if we like just shadow drop this, so like we actually have to like make a release. But a shadow drop is like one of those, it's a very neat tactic to like get people interested, and
the biggest
get a lot of
example of that
engagement
I can know of recently is like Apex Legends, right? Like that was just a game they released out of nowhere, didn't they?
Yeah, but Apex is like a little different just because Apex is like, it's not like a known IP. When a known IP releases something without like any announcements or like precedents of like, oh, like this is just coming out, that to the fan base has like this really huge surge of like interest and engagement, because now nobody knows anything about it. There's like no spoilers online. Everything is just new. So it's like it kind of takes you even back to like how things were back before like the internet had all this information of like game releases and everything, and like, you know, because like if you go about it through the traditional way, right, it's like, well, if you go watch like the IGN video on the game and like other reviewers and stuff, it spoils a lot about like what's happening in the game. You know, let's be honest here, right? If this game had a release date in the state it is in now, and then like content creators got a chance to play it now, it'd be really hard for hype to be super high when like content creators are like, oh, but like, you know, it's missing things, there's not much ranked mode, you know, there's like, you know, they'll start nitpicking at it, and then that like decreases hype. Like you have to leverage like where your game is at, and then at that point leverage like, okay, well then do we want to make an announcement for it? Because like content creators and everyone else is going to talk, sorry, I'm like talking a lot and like my voice is starting to hurt.
No, this is really interesting. Keep going.
Yeah, give me like a quick minute to like catch my breath.
Sure. So I think that with just while you're catching your voice there, I think that with the you make a lot of good points there, because if we did have this release date hyped for like 6 months in advance and they released the game like this, I would be very shocked because of some of just the basic stuff in the game that isn't fully polished. And I don't know if you watched the stream earlier when I looked over some of like the really basic grammar problems and stuff the game has, which is like weird stuff that you would not expect for a release game. It's so strange. Like when you go to the character frames to customize your profile, it says things like icon frame 4 and
the
icon
stream
frame
database
7.
frames, yeah.
Right?
Right,
It's like
right.
how, you know, if we had like a 6-month release, I would be like, what the, this is kind of embarrassing, right?
Right, exactly. And then like, you know, at that point when you guys get builds and like, because then there's two facets of this, right? It's like if they went through that path, and then they like give you a release date, but then they didn't give the embargo date where like that's the date where like reviewers and companies and people can like talk about the game and like rate the game and discuss like their experiences with the game. If they didn't allow that, that's already going to set like that's going to set a negative precedence, because then it's like, oh, well, like, why didn't they allow that, right? And it's probably because they don't want social media to like show that like, oh, this game isn't finished. But like now that they did the shadow drop, it makes more sense. That's like, because everyone was so hyped about it, right? Nobody noticed, and it's like, I think it's taken us about like a week or two where it's like, oh, but like. And I think the first person I saw that like made mention of it is MBT, right? And the very first video, he was like, "Oh well, it's really good. It's not finished." But then even that video, he was expressing so much like hype and excitement towards like everything that he loved to the game, while still talking on the negatives about it. It makes sense that in the metadata, there's like a bunch of calls and stuff to like do the things that are going to help like retain players. But yeah, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, I definitely don't think this game is like designed for like a competitive like TCG player. This definitely feels like it's trying to just have the highest like net to have the highest amount of like concurrent viewers that can like stay in the game, because that's in a sense like what's going to make this game successful. It's just a high average player base. And that I don't think that takes into consideration like pro players. I don't think TCG local players are like, they're very small, minute people, and they kind of know. It's like at this point, like, dude, with like everything that we've sucked through for like format to format, with all these like crazy broken rules and decks and stuff, like, dude, we've stuck around through Pepe, stuck around through Rongo, through toss format, like through all these different things. Like they're like, dude, we know they're gonna like stay and play this game anyways. Like they're passionate Yu-Gi-Oh players. Like let's just focus now more on getting the newbies, and like let's get all these other people. And I've been like watching their streams of people who are like coming into this as like the first thing, and they're like struggling at like bronze and silver, you know. And that's just something like we as like TCG players, like we don't have that. Like we're not really struggling at those ranks. I think I ended up going through like an 18 win streak all the way to plat. Like it's like a very different experience that we have to the game compared to like someone new. I think right now, if you're like a new player or like a returning player, you're like struggling at those ranks. You're like trying to read everything. You're trying to catch up. And if at this point there's like a really big ladder system for you to grind, you're probably going to be like less motivated to do that.
Yeah, the divide between like, I mean, it was not even a divide, right? But I mean, I guess that's probably the best way to describe it is like TCG player and non-TCG player. Like if you've played the trading card game IRL, like this game is like a cakewalk, right? It's actually just, you know, embarrassingly easy to get like plat in like hours. Whereas there is literally just this massive, huge demographic of players that like literally struggle in silver.
Like I know, like even when I was watching Morse Critical, it's like it's such a different like experience, right? That he goes through the game where he's like, "Fuck, like what do I do?" Right? And then it's like he's got like the invocation and he's got like a Shadal fusion and there's like an extra monster, like, and you're just like he's like struggling. He's like, "Dude, I don't know what the hell to do." And it's like it's a very simple board state, but it's not. It's simple to me because like I've been playing the game for so long.
Yeah,
but it's not simple to Charlie because he's like, I don't know what that thing does. I don't know what my cards do. I don't know like what my Shadal cards do. So, but like it's interesting because like you even him like you see him like getting better and better. Like you still see improvement within the player base, and it's just that growth that like I think we've just taken for granted, like how far we've come along. Compared to like all these new people coming along.
Wow, I never thought I would have such an insightful conversation through this through a viewer call in, but this has been really awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I thought it'd be cool to have someone that like works more like within this field and stuff, like just kind of give their like 2 cents, because it was like a little like I remember like when I was watching your stream yesterday, and then I saw like Lithium's video, and then I saw DZ's video. I was like, oh, you guys, like no, it's okay, like everything's gonna be okay.
All right, thank you so much for joining me, man. I appreciate it. I will hopefully speak to you another time.
Sounds good. Take it easy.
All right, take care. Smartest Farfa viewer confirmed. Am I right, chat?